Welcome to Rocketship, the home of epic React Native content. I'm Simon Grimm, creator of Galaxies.dev, and today's guest is Gabriel Dierks, a fellow German from Berlin, lead mobile engineer at Kadmos, and just recently gave a talk at App.js. So Gabriel, thanks for joining me.
Yes, thank you very much, Simon, for having me. I'm super happy to be here.
Gabriel gave a cool talk about EAS and how Kadmos, the startup he's working for, helps seafarers. So it's a very specific niche with very specific problems. You talked about bundle sizes and the problems that occur when you're on a ship, of course, and how to update the apps and how Expo helps. You talked about versioning control, and we're going to reiterate some of that stuff in today's podcast and dive a bit deeper into a few of those areas. But before we start, maybe you can start with a quick introduction of yourself, a bit about you, and as well, I would love to know more about Kadmos and what this fintech is really about.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's start with me. Like I did in the talk as well. I'm Gabriel. I'm 32 years old and live currently in the Berlin area, from Germany, like you said, like more from the Hamburg area originally. And what else? Yeah, I work with React Native for quite a while now, different companies, different startups. I live in Berlin area now 10 years. So on that 10 years, I think I was, jumping around a lot and also did some freelancing, some founding. Yeah, currently now ended up at a fintech called Kadmos. And yeah, we have a beautiful office in the heart of Berlin, as they say, in the maybe you know the Hackische Höfe. It's
Oh, yeah, I heard about that before.
very famous tourist spot in Berlin. In the summer, it's very full there, very crowded. But that's where I work at the moment, and we do salary payments for migrant workers. So we have like an end-to-end salary payment system, starting with the company itself, giving a possibility to the accountants to basically provide the salary to the employees, assign certain salaries, or there's a bunch of different ways salaries paid actually in shipping. So also with like smaller amounts towards the middle of the month, for example. And then let's say the end product that I'm also working with is the mobile app for the workers themselves. So they get the salary on in a digital wallet, and they are able to spend it with a Visa card, which is attached to the wallet, and also to remit it to their home countries. Ideally, some low fares. We try to keep them as low as possible, or also as fast as possible to their different local banks where they're from.
So the app you're working on is basically like the management platform for the employee itself to see like, okay, I got paid on that date, and this is like the current amount I have on my card, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the entry point for just receiving your salary or salary advances. That's what I meant earlier with like different ways of getting paid. And from there on, you can decide basically freely as the seafarer. Sorry, I didn't come to the seafarer part yet, but as the migrant workers, that you can basically either spend the money with your card or send it in different forms. So we have the bank payouts to your home bank, let's say, but also we have seafarer to seafarer, like a digital bank transfer. So, sorry, not a bank transfer, but like like Money Beam or whatever it's called on N26, where basically you have a wallet to wallet transaction. So it goes directly. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. By the way, fun fact, I think your React Native roots go deep. I think you said you wrote your bachelor thesis on React Native. Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, it's been quite a long journey indeed. I also checked actually prior to the talk with what Expo version I started, and was Expo SDK 32. But even before that, I was looking. I even read, I think, one of the first books that were ever written, and maybe the only book that was ever written about React Native, which was obviously for the bachelor thesis. But so it was long time ago, and was very, I would say, very beta back in the day. So companies would be like, React Native, I don't think that's gonna last much longer. It's gonna be the
It
next,
was.
whatever, the next Angular. I don't know if we can invest in this future technology. So
Yeah, it was
yeah.
even like my bachelor thesis topic was even like earlier. I had Titanium Studio in my bachelor thesis, which was like pre Cordova stuff.
Right.
So really super early days of cross platform. And then, yeah, in 2015 or 16, I had a video with React Native. It's so funny. I look at this video and I can absolutely not recall doing this video. I mean, I forget things pretty quickly, but I just don't feel it that I ever did this video, like that I ever wrote this kind of React code. It's amazing how easy the
Yeah.
brain can forget stuff. So anyway, we're glad we're in 2024 and Expo is at a good point. We've all seen it at App.js. I think React Native and the Expo community is alive and kicking.
Oh
It's,
yeah.
it's constantly moving forward, and it's great to see that it's used for many companies and that you are also embracing it at Kadmos.
Mhm.
I don't want to dive too deep into the actual platform, but I'm always curious of how these platforms are built. So you're probably not part of the backend team, but do you know like roughly how the server, what technology, what programming languages are used to like build your backend out?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I'm a little involved in different front-end projects that we have as well, but mostly on the mobile side. And back-end, we have quite an extensive architecture. Yeah, I mean, obviously, building banking services is always very back-end heavy, and it integrates deeply with different payment service providers, PSPs. And ideally, you would be able to have your own architecture, support as many of these as possible. So you would build like a reusable system. So we work with Java, Spring Boot in the backend, and we have like a microservices architecture that would, integrate it, like I said, with different providers and sort of build our own system on top of that.
I mean, Java Spring isn't too bad. I've seen worse stacks for backends. I
Yeah.
mean, I've also seen new stuff with like Go or Rust,
Mm,
something like that. Did you
yeah.
consider something more modern? Does it just not work with all the banking stuff?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I know for a fact from provider that we work with that they're using Node.js, for example. But I think more commonly is something, let's say a bit older, or there are for sure a lot of groundwork has been done in the past on like a lot of Java libraries, and that obviously integrate a lot better with different financial systems. I mean, JavaScript notorious also for some errors in calculation, like math calculations. So
Yeah.
maybe, understandably, it's not maybe the frame like or the technology of choice, but I think I'm quite happy anyway. Also from the front end perspective, we have a nice system. I mean, we use REST, which is also, I mean, it works
Nice.
well. We have good typed endpoints with like open API types. It's not much to complain about. We have nice collaboration anyway, and yeah.
So before we dive deeper into the story of the Seafarer, which you already teased at, just to wrap this up, do you also provide like a web front end of the application? And is this also tied to React Native, or is it maybe using Next.js just so we get like a complete picture of like the whole system?
Right. So we have the accounting platform, which is a separate product from the mobile app. So because obviously it's completely different user bases, and the mobile app, so the banking or the bank app is just a mobile app at the moment. So we don't have a web platform. There
I
is
will
a
download
certain
it.
demand. You can download it, but you cannot log in. It's since we are working with the corporates. It's like obviously you have like to get in through like a login code and whatnot. But yeah,
Ah,
I mean,
yes. I
I
can open
think
it.
I
I can get a
mean
first glimpse.
exactly. You can see the login screen. And what else? Yeah, exactly. So I was going to say that the web platform, there is a demand for it. And also the way we build our application, I would say there is also a possibility we could think about using, for example, Expo or React Native Web to take certain parts of the app and have them available. on the web platform. I think this is definitely possible. We have like a design system which is completely independent of the rest of the app, which would work on both systems, for example. So there's a lot of reusability. Funny enough, this was also exactly my bachelor thesis, like the reusability aspect of web and mobile with React Native and React back in the day. And
That wasn't probably the best 5 years or 6 years ago.
no,
Oh.
it was not. But on the other hand side, I remember I was measuring like pixels, and I was like, so if I have a button and it's like 120 pixels on web, how does it look on mobile? So I was doing like a lot of testing because there was not so much material available on these similarities, and I was surprised back then that like actually, the style sheet and having like a button that is 120 pixel actually on the same phone in the web would also look the same. So I was blown away by actually there's a lot of reusability in terms of styling, for example, and that hasn't changed for sure. I mean, that's still
Right.
the case. Yeah.
So while we're here talking about reusability and styling systems and the app, let's quickly go through that as well. If you can share some of the technologies, like the UI space is very fragmented with like Tailwind UI or Native Wind and Tamagui and whatnot. What is the approach you're using at Kadmos? And also, are you also using like the latest stuff from Expo, like Expo Router, which potentially could make it easy, like to bring this to the web? Could you share some of the technologies used in the app?
Yeah, sure. No problem. We have the design system is based on styled components. So that's something we in the team have all worked with in the past on both web and mobile. Right now there are a lot of different ways of getting CSS back and forth. For us, this has worked really well, of like having a nice JavaScript component written in like CSS styles. And yeah, so that's kind of it in terms of technology, because the rest we kind of built ourselves. So we decided to build our own design library. And I'm pretty happy actually with that decision because it's very tailored for us, but then also it's very reusable in many different ways. So I think it's still something worth doing as a company to kind of decide, okay, this is the minimum of amount of components that we need. And we're also working very closely with the design team, right? So we're sitting together and they have like the Figma component system, and then we have a very close version of that on our side, actually also attached to a storybook. So you can also test these
Nice.
components there. Yeah, and so basically it's really, I think it's a nice way of where I feel like it's still kind of worth it to reinvent the wheel now. I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel, but we are
Yeah.
like building these components, and yeah.
I'm curious because some people have asked me this before. Is in 2024, is there an easy way to like get the designs from Figma into a React Native app, or do you just have to like code everything that you see again in React Native?
Yeah, I think, this is also something that over the years was always like somehow you had the feeling it would come soon, but it never really came. There is a React Native Figma plugin where you get some code and you get like, so technically you can copy it, but then again, it's just very basic and it might not, if the designer doesn't do it right, it might not really make sense the way it's built. So it's really not, it's really not there, I guess, especially if you also have this component system. Actually,
I don't understand it.
you would think it's there, but it's just somehow the worlds are too different. Because engineers, they have like their own reusable things or systems like Tailwind in mind, and it just doesn't translate back and forth. So I think that's just, I mean, you
I mean,
can,
it
I
should
guess,
it shouldn't be too hard, like to export from Figma just to style sheet to just like have some sort of
yeah.
middle ground. You can still wrap it in a style component then somehow, but if you could just get it to style sheet, that would be so
Mm.
helpful.
Yeah, I mean, the styles, like the values, you can definitely copy, right? If you have like some fixed values, but then again, probably you won't have that because you have your own theming. And I mean, maybe some values or some color values you can take over. Like if there's also, like the theme colors are also in the Figma used, so you would know, okay, copy this stuff over. But it's true. It does seem like there could be a project that would maybe abstract a little bit a layer of like in between. I don't know, maybe it exists also, but from what I know, we're still kind of at this point. Yeah.
Maybe somebody creative can come up with it. So
Yeah.
let's talk a bit about the app and also getting closer to the talk you gave at App.js. By the way, for everyone checking it out, even if you can't log in, I really like the login experience because on the login, there's a scroll view, which I usually don't like. Like in every app review, I say I hate it when I can scroll my login screen. But on that login screen, it fades the login button when I scroll up and down. I don't think I've seen that before. And I don't know exactly why, but it feels good. So thank you for like this already shows me that the people creating this app spend some time like on creating a good UI. So I'm pretty sure the inside area will be great as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great compliment. I think that's part of the behaviors that we try to implement at some point. It's like something that would in the entire app somehow behave in the same way. So yeah, it makes sense. You see it
I
already from
see.
the outside, and yeah, I
Nice.
will forward these props to the design team as well.
Yes, do it. So, you already touched on this that this app is mostly for seafarers. So, could you like maybe was also the introduction of your talk? Could you explain what are the main challenges of these seafarers?
Right, exactly. Originally, Kadmos was built in mind for all kinds of migrant workers. So basically, yeah, workers that work away from their home countries globally somewhere in different industries. But since the beginning, we kind of specialized on the shipping industry. And yeah, the shipping industry is a huge industry and a lot of different requirements. Also, I would say different types of seafarers. But in my talk, I also gave a bit like the example of the maybe most common use case we have, which would be probably a Filipino seafarer or maybe Indian. These are like very big countries. But that doesn't mean they work in those countries, right? So they might be somewhere on the ocean. Yeah, lots of different routes that these ships are taking, and they're working on the container ship, right? We also have some customers with like cruise ships, or yeah, really a lot of different a lot of different use cases. But let's say this person works on a cruise ship, and yeah, in shipping there are a lot of different contract types, but very common is like, let's say you work for half a year for a certain contractor, then you move again to the next one, and you also move cross country. You have different, you have different needs for maybe a new SIM card, a new phone, coming with a new employer. So I would say for a mobile app, that's already quite a lot of different things. And on top, we have also, just a huge variety of devices. I mean, I guess every product has this kind of issue, or not issue, but yeah, problem to solve. Back in web, for example, I remember back in the days, the problem was always the Internet Explorer, which was one thing that you really needed to solve. If you had like a wide customer base and didn't just care about Chrome and high-end connection. And now for us, it's more like these lots of different Android phones and with maybe some VPNs or some custom ROMs or yeah, a lot of different edge cases that we have to solve. And I think that just comes with the fact that it's just a very global product. So really working in countries and on the sea where no other app maybe is tested or is needed to be working. Yeah.
So that definitely means every update should be as small as possible for these people.
Yeah.
I'm going to get to the updates in a second. Just one question before that. Do you know from your experience, do these people also care about like the initial installed bundle size? Because, for example, at the app.js, Cedric showcased this tool Expo Atlas to like analyze your bundle, and I was like, I don't know if I care about this. Like, I care about this on the web in terms of performance, but for a native app, I never really thought about if my users would download like 50 megabytes or 60. Do you think these people, like Seafarers, would care about that initial install bundle as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think in general, I mean, again, depends also on the seafarer maybe or on the use case, but think a lot of the seafarers we met, because that's also something we are doing as a company. We actually onboarded some people on the ships. So
Cool.
we went there with a small team of like maybe product and design and or also customer support, and we would go there and try and understand their struggles during the sign up process and the onboarding. And yeah, I think some of the feedback was for sure that like it takes so long to download and with my bad connection, and it uses a lot of my prepaid megabytes. And
Interesting.
so yeah, that's really it is a real use case that obviously I also haven't really thought about in other companies that I work for. I was like, always these discussions about bundle size, like because there's a lot of discussions right between React Native and native engineers would be like especially native Android engineers would be like, yeah, our bundle sizes they're so small. You with your React Native, and I was always like, come on, who cares? You know, you download it once and then it's fine. But in our use case, actually, yeah, it is also really about that. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Good to know. So,
Hmm.
in your talk, you then talked about some pipelines at your work and how you like manage releases. Could you describe these pipelines? Because I found them quite interesting. Not only did you have one additional store we have to talk about in a second on the Huawei phones,
Mhm.
but how do you in general manage like when you want to release a new version? If you push some code, what happens in your current pipeline?
Okay, right. So, yeah, like I mentioned, I didn't have too much time to go through the whole pipeline, but I would say generally it's not super complex. I mean, we're still small companies. I don't know if you've seen the talk with the micro apps, for example, from JP Morgan Chase. Great talk, but we're definitely far away from something like this where you have micro apps and all merge them into one big app. So yeah, our process is more straightforward, I would say. We have like a testing app, and this testing app basically, whenever you merge something to the to be tested branch, it would create a new version, either a new bundle or a new over-the-air update, which would then notify on Slack or whatnot, and would let QA and maybe design QA know as well to check out the new feature we built, a new fix. And and yeah, I guess once something is successfully tested, it would be integrated into our staging app, which is also like a separate bundle, just because it's for us it's very accessible, right? Over TestFlight and Google Play Beta,
Yeah.
people all can easily download the app there, and yeah, then from there on, it would be integrated into the staging app where the end-to-end tests run. And then, yeah, at some point we would promote this to the production bundle, or on this is something we would do manually on production, or also roll out an over-the-air update. Something that happens. Sorry, question.
No, go ahead.
All right. Something that happens along the way is there's a separate entity created of this version. So it's like a semantic version, right? And then this new version entity would exist in our system and sort of be another failsafe to maintain our mandatory update sheet. And this mandatory update sheet is something, you know, you have in the app, right? It pops up, it tells you there's a new update which is mandatory or also can be optional, and that's then also the user the choice. Okay, I want to download a new fix or something, or gives us the possibility to enforce an update, which is something you have to do sometimes, especially I think in fintech. There's certain legal compliance
Mm.
things or certain legal changes that yeah would then just require us to do that. But we don't want to do it as much because again we know our users are also not super happy in downloading things all the time. Yeah, that's also what I mentioned in my talk. That's why we would try to enforce as little bundle updates as possible, and when we can, we also would send smaller chunks over the air, and it's like a really small fix, especially. Yeah.
Okay, I got a couple of questions to this. So first of all, I assume all of this relies on like the Expo application services. So if you merge into your to test branch, does
Hmm.
everything afterwards like happen automatically on EAS?
Yeah. So So we have this sort of fingerprint comparison that I also mentioned in my talk. The fingerprint would then be just checking if like something in the native code has changed, and if there is a change from the on the current testing app towards what I'm trying to merge in, automatically a bundle would be created. Otherwise, it will be integrated over the air. And yeah, that's all happening from then on from Expo. So it's really very easy process. You don't really have to think about it.
How is this fingerprint integrated? I've read about this in the Expo SDK release notes. I think it was announced like last SDK or so,
Yeah.
but like it's not really in your app code itself, right? Is this just something you specify in the app JSON and then EAS automatically checks it, or how does the Expo fingerprint work?
Yeah, exactly. So that's something that Expo does entirely. We can specify a little bit with like a fingerprint ignore file, or there's also another YAML file to maybe configure it a little bit more. But in the end, Expo does the comparisons. You can either over the Expo application services, over the CLI, for example, just download a fingerprint of your app. That would create a fingerprint of your current app, which would then also is like long JSON with a bunch of hashes, and these hashes are then describing describing the native code, basically, like the fingerprint of the native code. And if you compare this, then also Expo would again take the current code that's just like on a branch or something, and would again create this fingerprint and then compare these hashes of the different fingerprints. Yeah. Really
Nice.
cool
That's
thing.
really interesting. Yeah, it is. So that basically defines if the app needs to be completely updated through iOS and Android, or if an over-the-air update for the bundle is enough. You said you combined this also with your internal versioning system. So you have like a
Mm-hmm.
table where it says like version 1 point something something. And if you encounter this version, you need an update or you don't need an update.
Yeah.
Is this working in combination with the information from the fingerprint, like from that fingerprint check, or how do you update your internal versioning table?
Exactly. Let's say on staging and testing, especially, this is all automated. Since we want to test everything that we push there, it would automatically update this version in the from our systems.
Right.
Basically, the app would know this is a version I mandatory need to update to. On production, we would not have this fully automated, so we would go on a back office and sort of check ourselves if we want to force certain updates. And there is also important that we double check, for example, with the updates API that Expo provides. So you can, from our server, we can check if this update is actually available on EAS. And the same we actually do for bundles as well. So we check with the Apple API, like the Apple Store API, same as the Huawei App Gallery and Android SDK. It's a bit tricky, but we would also try and make sure this version is available before we manually decide to enforce it to our users.
I see. Yeah. So you show this like overlay. There's a new update, and then if it's optional, I can say no, I want to skip this, or I can do it, and then it uses like this, I think, use updates hook from Expo
Yeah.
to update your bundle. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think I've never really implemented this in reality, but people keep asking about this. I think especially also about this part of the versioning system. So usually people want to know like how can I prevent
Hmm.
people from using my app if there's a new version? And is your check really like just you make a call to your REST API and you get like the versions and then you check if optional something and then we prevent access? Is it really as easy as that in the end?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, like I mentioned on the on the version service, there are a bunch of things happening, like some double checks. But yeah, otherwise it's just a normal REST API call. I think a lot of people are also doing this with like Firebase remote config. That's, I think, a very common tool to also do something similar. But this doesn't work for us, for example, because of Huawei. Since Huawei is banned all the Google services, we cannot integrate any Firebase. Yeah, it's the whole thing, and that's
Okay, now
also
you
why we
get
have to.
interesting. So I took a note when I watched your talk and you talked about this Huawei App Gallery. I was like,
Right.
WTF? What is this? So can you tell me about the Huawei App Gallery? What is it and why do people use it?
Yeah, sure. Honestly, I think it's still a little bit of a secret tip for like an app developer if because it's not as oversaturated as the Apple Store and Google Play Store. So let's say you build the 1000th habit app out there, probably a lot more anyway. Like the 1 millionth habit app on Apple Store might be only the 1000th on Huawei App Gallery. So I think it's actually like it could help your company to kickstart. So yeah, what is it? So in the end, there was this whole like political decision to. I think it started with WhatsApp being banned, and then anyway, it's a long story, but I think the gist of it was that Huawei was banned and for anything that was related to Google. So you couldn't deploy your or like market your apps in the Google Play Store. You couldn't use any Google services anymore on the newer Huawei phones. So the older Huawei phones, they still have Google Play Store, but additionally also their new store called Huawei App Gallery and also the HMS, the Huawei Mobile Services, which is kind of the Firebase of Huawei. Yeah, a lot of things I also learned because it's also the first app that I integrated, or like especially with Expo, is working in the Huawei App Gallery, and also push notifications. For example, again, another thing that you would normally do with Firebase, right? And then all of a sudden, you need a separate system. So we also had to build with the Huawei push service a separate system
Crazy.
for push notification. Yeah. And it's, yeah, I mean, I think for us, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because we have a lot of Asian users that would, in Asia, for example, it's very popular in certain countries. I've been to Bali a couple of years ago, and when you see like a poster there, the new app, like advertising for the new whatever app, it would say download now. And the first button you see is actually App Gallery, and then you see Apple Store, Google Play Store.
Interesting.
But it's because Huawei phones are also really popular there. But here in Europe or also the US, nobody would think about doing that. So it's not, no one is really like, oh, I need to publish this also in the App Gallery. But yeah, so.
I was just checking it out. I can download it. I assume I can't download the app gallery on my iPhone. What the app gallery? Could I install the app gallery on like any kind of Android phone that I own here in Europe?
So if it's a Huawei, yes.
Okay.
So I
So
think
only
it's
on this device.
yeah.
Okay. But
As far as I know,
it's really interesting. I just took a look. Like some of the popular apps are really in there. The
yeah,
first one was like Rise of Kingdoms, 8 million installs. It's like a
yeah, exactly.
like Clash of Clans thing, TikTok, Snapchat, Telegram, everything's in there. PUBG Mobile. That's
Yeah.
so interesting. I never heard about this. Yeah,
Well,
great. This is amazing. Don't want to dive too deep into this stuff, but how do you get your app on that store? Is there any problem in like how? What do you need? An APK? Can you upload an APK, or is there any other stuff you need to do before you can get your app in there?
yeah, exactly. So it works kind of with our CI. So Expo doesn't have a app gallery integration. So there's no EAS
Yeah.
submit to the app gallery. But they have an API and it's actually it's not so complex. It's pretty straightforward. And what we can do there is actually, yeah, upload APK or AAB, so Android bundle. And this is created by Expo already. So we just have to basically then push it to the app gallery, so to our developer account. And yeah, from there we basically publish it like you would do it on the other stores. The review process is a bit random. I think very telling is the fact that it has a button after 72 hours remind about reviewing again. So after 72 hours, you can send a reminder to have your app being reviewed again. So it can take really long, unfortunately, sometimes. And there's also no really way of like expedite it, like you can do on Apple, for example. But overall, it's a decent experience, and it's also very well integrated with React Native. So the Huawei developer community, there are a lot of docs how to make React Native work, make your Android app work, because in the end you can just have a normal Android app, which comes with a lot of upsides. Apart from using the Google services, you can use over-the-air updates, for example, which is for us amazing. but a lot of different also Android SDKs would work. Actually, almost all of the Android SDKs work seamlessly on Huawei. So it's really just Android without Google services and with new services that you kind of have to integrate. And we actually had to build some config plugins. So from Expo, they have these config plugins, right, where you
Yes.
can configure like your Gradle files a little bit, or do some integrations there maybe that are necessary for your app to work, for the Huawei SDK to work.
Interesting. I'm still, my mind is still blown that there's this whole app gallery I never heard about before. Because I mean, people also ask me a lot of questions on YouTube, and I never got the question like, how do I submit my app to the app gallery? But it's a
Yeah,
big place, and if it's so popular in Asia, maybe I should just do more for people in Asia. And probably I haven't covered this in a good way. Maybe I should generate or create an account, but I need a Huawei phone, right?
yeah. Ideally, you need that. Yeah,
I have just an old Google Pixel here. I might have to order some, but I should probably get one. That would be a fun experience.
yeah.
Oh
I
my.
think it's a whole world. Yeah, it's a different experience for sure.
How hard was the integration of that specific Huawei push service? You said you couldn't use Google, of course. Was it good, bad, same experience as Firebase?
Yeah, I think it's similar. It was similar. So it was a bit harder to test because Huawei phones, the only thing that we don't do is have like separate test app on a Huawei phone, because
Mm-hmm.
as I mentioned, we use Google Play Beta, and since it's pretty much an Android app, so 99% is an Android app, so we don't need to test it separately. But the push notification, obviously, we had to test separately. So the testing was a bit difficult. Um, because also again we didn't have EAS at the time, so we kind of had to go back to building APKs and sort of play around with that. But yeah, the integration, we worked with our backend team, and we have our own notification system, which is like integrated with Firebase, but it also works independently. It was kind of just another integration on top, which I think was pretty fine, like very very similar, I think, to the App Gallery and to the Firebase. But what is also actually interesting is that the HMS push notifications specifically would also work actually on other phones. So if I remember this correctly, you could also use this basically the other way around then, for instead of Firebase. So
Ah,
not really entirely sure how that's possible, because the Huawei App Gallery doesn't exist, but the mobile services actually are actually allowed the other way around. So we were thinking for some time to actually only use this Huawei push system for all the different versions, but we ended up still having this separately because Firebase is just very well integrated, obviously, with our
yeah,
iOS
it is.
and yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, like this whole Firebase thing, it is a bit questionable. Like everyone's complaining about iOS and the App Store and their monopoly, but nobody talks about push notifications in Android and that you are forced to use Firebase and that you just
Yeah,
can't escape Firebase. I don't know if something will happen to this over the next years. I know we in the Europe are very picky about browsers and tools and whatever. We
yeah,
introduce many interesting laws that are not always helpful, especially like all the cookie consent stuff or GDPR. When I go to a random blog to check out a new recipe, I have to click in 5 different places. That's probably not a good advancement that we introduced.
right.
Um, but maybe we're going to see something on that in the future. I don't know. It's
Yeah, I think so. I think Firebase is already a bit under fire from the EU, so I think there might be something happening. Yeah, it's possible.
yeah. So the last thing I wanted to ask is, Kadmos, people can have a credit card or a debit card, a Visa card. I
Hmm.
assume that's somehow issued through your web application or something.
Right.
How is this connected to the mobile app? Can I like scan my card and somehow get it into the app? Is there any kind of cool technology or any hoops you had to jump through to enable this in a React Native project?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's not something super complex actually. So we have two ways actually to activate the card in the mobile app, the Visa card. One is over our payment provider, so that would be like a hosted web page that the app leads you to and then activates the card there. And the other way is just scanning like a barcode that is coming together with the card. So we would send out these cards, right, to the ships, for example, and then you would get like a certain barcode to activate the card. And we use like, I think we use Expo Camera. Yeah, the barcodes, they have this barcode scan ability. So you would get some data there, and this would then trigger the card activation process.
But after the activation, can you also like, for example, getting it into the iOS wallet? Do you have some sort of integration in that area as well?
That's something actually we're working on. iOS again is also, I don't think I mentioned that, but it's actually a small market for us compared to Android.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think at the moment it's like 70-30 because it's really very Android heavy market. That's something we're working on together with one of the providers that we're using. So we're in a stage of like transitioning to moving a lot of things in-house. I think that's also a lot of fintechs, they start with using a lot of external technology, and then more and more gets moved in-house. Same as Apple Pay, Google Pay. And so for the Apple Pay, it's still a bit in the future, and not super on our priority list, but it's definitely there. And in the end, we try to really give users the seamless fintech experience so they don't miss any features that they would have on Revolut or whatever. That's really also our mission, to bring all of these features over. And even though a lot of these seafarers are not very tech native and they maybe don't even know what they're missing, but still, I mean, there's still, for us, it's important that they get a great experience. Yes. And they can have like standing orders or all kinds of things that you would need from a banking product.
Yeah. I think this is super interesting because usually I think many React Native developers focus a lot on iOS because I feel like React Native is working a bit better on iOS in general.
I agree.
And especially like in the United States, I think many people just have an iPhone, and we also do this for Android, but it works great on iOS, and every demo, it looks great on iOS. So at the App.js also pretty much every demo was on an iPhone.
Yes.
But in your case, it's like the complete opposite. Your main market is in a different world, in a different area of the world. You even have a different app store, and so many other requirements that I have never thought about before. So congratulations on building that app and sailing around these issues, metaphorically speaking. I saved
this one you wrote exactly. You wrote
Actually,
this
no,
down.
I just came up. I came it up with. I had a lot written down, but I just came up with that.
Nice.
Anyway, Gabriel, thank you so much for sharing the insights from Kadmos. Thank you for your talk at App.js. I will definitely put a link to that talk below. Where are other places that you hang out? Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, thank you so much as well. I'm super happy as well to have been on this podcast. It's I really like your podcast, so it's
thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to be here, and was a great interview. Yeah, they can find me on Twitter, I guess. The thing is Gabriel TV is my handle.
I was always thinking, are you doing Twitter or anything? Like Gabriel TV sounds like you have a TV channel or something, or is this just
Oh, that's from a time where I actually did Twitch for
I knew
like
it.
Half a year. Yeah, exactly. So I did some coding on Twitch with like a little app that I built. I think it was also Expo, or it's just React Native. Some time ago, but I stuck to that name. But yeah, exactly. That's where the TV came from.
Yeah, we all have a history of picking bad names. My Twitter handle is also really, really shit, but anyway.
Yeah, right. And now I actually want to check mark, and you don't really, you cannot really change it anymore if you want to check mark at some point in your life. So, yeah.
Exactly. Anyway, okay. Thank you so much for joining me. Everyone check out Kadmos.io. I will put the link to Gabriel's talk under this video. And of course, check out galaxies.dev if you want more resources on learning React Native. So thanks again, Gabriel, and all the best for Kadmos.
Thank you as well. Bye-bye.
Bye.